Hello, Controller Lamb. It is a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
This discussion that we're having is to learn a little bit about the Allegheny County Executive candidates and how they would represent the Hill District neighborhood and neighborhoods like the Hill District in some cases. So with no further ado, please note that the Hill CDC is a nonpartisan organization. This is not an endorsement, but rather a conversation to really explore the issues of our day in the Hill District neighborhood and the city of Pittsburgh, more specifically. So in 2 minutes or less, Controller Lamb, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, yourself, and why you're running for Allegheny County Executive.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity. So I am Michael Lamb. I'm the city controller here in Pittsburgh, and I grew up here in Pittsburgh. I grew up in one of those neighborhoods where everyone knew everyone, and our parents looked out for the kids on the street, and their parents looked out for us. And when you grow up in a neighborhood like that, I think you get a sense of responsibility, not just for yourself, but for your neighbors and for your community. And that was further instilled in us at home. Mainly by my mother, who always used to say, "Look around. There's something you can do. Look around." And when you didn't have something to do, she'd give you suggestions on things you could be doing to help in the neighborhood. And so it was natural for me, I think, when I got out of Penn State, to choose a career in public service. And I've worked every day since then, trying to make government work better for the people that it serves. And I've done that in a whole bunch of capacities. 25 years ago, this county took a bold leap to change its form of government, creating a county executive and a county council. I led that effort. I led that reform. And I think that's what I bring to the table in this race, is someone who has a vision, but also who activates that vision. Somebody who doesn't just talk about problems, but someone who actually goes out and solves problems, implementing change. I became a lawyer. I went back to school at night to get my law degree. I also got my master's degree in public management. And I started to work around government and see these broken systems, see the injustice that we have in our system. I saw a lot of that when I worked in the criminal justice, in the criminal justice area. And then just the corruption that we've seen. And so I put so much of my focus on the idea of transparency, because I think before you can really deal with a problem, you've got to show it. And that's what transparency is to me. That's why we talk so much about it here in the city, in the controller's office, where we've created these new tools of transparency, Open Book Pittsburgh, Fiscal Focus Pittsburgh, to really show broken systems and to show injustice and to show corruption. And those are the tools that I want to bring with me to county government. Having that open feeling, that understanding of how government really works, and explaining that to our citizenry, which I think, county government is one of those governments that is sometimes a step away from people. It doesn't really, a lot of people really don't interact so much with their county government. And so really explaining the county government, both financially and otherwise, is really important. And I think that one of the first meetings I took as city controller was at the University of Pittsburgh, where we created an organization called Connect, the Congress of Neighboring Communities. It's the city of Pittsburgh and all those communities that touch the city of Pittsburgh working for the first time on issues important to the urban core of this region. And I bring that up because I think it's important for the next county executive to build a new partnership with our municipal partners, both here in the city and the other 129 municipalities out there. This fractional system of government holds us back, and we need to be able to work better with all of our autonomous communities, but do it in a way that delivers services regardless of where the boundaries are, and really bringing value added service to every community across Allegheny County. And that's really why I'm running for county executive.
Excellent. Thank you. I see you've already covered a number of the topics, at least at a high level, that we're going to discuss today. And so I'm excited about that. My first question for you is, how will you, as county executive, work with county council differently and the mayor of the city of Pittsburgh? How will you balance those roles? How will you approach those roles? Tell me a little bit about your philosophy on that.
So, I've always been somebody who appreciates the conversation, appreciates the input. When I've gone about making decisions, and I've made a lot of decisions for this community, but I do it first by gathering diverse input. Really hearing from a whole a different group of people, as many people as I can, as a diverse group of people as I can, and particularly those people who are closest to whatever the issue may be. If we're talking about criminal justice, we want to talk to former offenders. We want to talk to people who are involved in juvenile justice and in the justice system. We want to talk to our citizens about what that should look like. So any of those issues is something, I feel the same way about county council, and that, really having county council involved in a relationship and in decision making for this county. The reason that we set up county council was to bring that diversity, bring a geographic perspective to decision making here in Allegheny County, and I think that's important. And that relationship with the mayor, I think, is key. I mean, the mayor and the county executive really represent the leadership here in Allegheny County, and having a good relationship with the mayor, I think, is critical. While I am in a job right now that is often critical of the mayor, it's part of what I do, and really measuring performance in the city. I've always maintained a very positive relationship with everyone who's been mayor. I've served with 3 different mayors, and the current mayor, Ed Gainey, and I have a very positive and good relationship, and have had that for some time.
Okay, thank you. So for the benefit of those who are watching, if you could just really quickly explain what a city controller does. I think that'd be very helpful, because I think a lot of people really don't know what the role of a controller is. So it'd be helpful if you could explain that.
So the city controller has specific responsibilities. First off, we are the controller. We watch spending, where the treasurer watches the money coming in the door. We watch the money going out the door, right? So we're watching all of the spending that the city does, making sure that there's not waste, that there's not fraud, that there's not abuse of those tax dollars. And that job as a fiscal watchdog for the city is really the main part of our job. But I also serve as the city's accountant. So we do all the city's financial reporting, including the comprehensive financial report that we do every year, as well as the popular financial report that we do every year. And then I'm also the city's auditor. So we are auditing the city, not just the fiscal side of the city, which we do, but we also audit the city for performance. So we are in every department continuously, making sure that the city is participating in best practices, and making sure that they're getting the job done in the most effective way for taxpayers.
Thank you. I think that's very helpful. You alluded to some of this in your introduction, around how you may connect differently with communities. Can you spell out your vision? Because oftentimes the role of county executive is very disconnected from the on-the-ground neighborhoods and people who live in the county. Do you think that that balcony view is kind of where you will live, or we have what's your answer? I don't want to make suggestions as to what your answer should be, but I would love to know your philosophy on how to govern at that level as it relates to neighborhoods.
Yeah, and I think it's reflected in what we've talked about. My role in creating Connect, my role in the board of Three Rivers Wet Weather, where we have really people coming together to deal with problems in a more regional perspective. My idea is to create an office of municipal partnership within the county government, so that we are working every day on issues important to the municipalities and delivering value-added services to every municipality. And whether that's in issues of public safety or whether that's issues of economic development. I mean, I think that this fractional system of government holds us back in a lot of ways. A lot of our communities don't have the resources to do the things, even the basic things that they need to do within their community. And having the county play a much bigger role there is something that's very important to me, and I think something that's necessary if we're really going to, deliver value-added services to every citizen across this county.
Absolutely. Can you give me an example of how you would interact with residents and community-based organizations to ensure that that relationship exists?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the examples is something that we did early on. Back in, I authored a report back in 2011 called Critical Condition, and it was a look at EMS services. and how we could improve them, in communities adjacent to the city of Pittsburgh, where they don't have paid paramedics typically, or full-time, at least paid by the government paramedics. They have subscription services or some hybrid type system. And what we did was we found a way, working with Highmark and with UPMC, to address how to pay for the downtime of those critical services. And what we've done is create a value-added service where cross-boundary paramedics were responding to preventative type calls, whether it was asthmatics, whether they were congestive heart failure situations, diabetic situations, individuals who often were using the ambulance service and going to the emergency room because they weren't staying on their meds or doing proper preventative maintenance for themselves. And we were able to do that, get that funded, and really improve services to the community, but also lower costs for our ambulance services, lower costs for our emergency rooms. And it really did, not only did it lead to better services to our communities, but it really got our EMS service providers working together, where at one time we had 100 of them here in Allegheny County. We're down to 32 now. And it's not just that it's a consolidated service, it's a better service. And I think that's kind of what we talk about around municipal services. Again, delivering great services. The emergency call that you get shouldn't depend on what boundary you just crossed, right? And so we want to make sure that every community has quality services, and finding ways to do that in a cost-effective way.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about economic development and some of the workforce and job opportunities that you would envision bringing to the county. And also, how will you get those open jobs that, employers have struggled to get filled? How will you get those jobs filled?
Yeah, I talk about economic development differently than a lot of other candidates and a lot of other people do. I mean, to me, it's not about subsidizing land speculation. It's not about incentivizing some company to come here to operate. To me, it's got to be about investing in us. It's got to be investing in our communities, creating in our communities the kind of place where people want to live, the kind of place where businesses want to locate. And so it's let's do that investment rather than seeking outside to do that. And I think that goes to not just to job creation and to public space and to affordable housing and all these other issues that are so critical, infrastructure. But to me, it's about investing in our people as well. And you raise a great issue. These vacancies that we have here in jobs in our region. I created the Allegheny Achievers Program because of that issue. The Allegheny Achievers Program is going to allow every high school graduate in Allegheny County to go to community college for free. And we know right now 60% of all job vacancies in Allegheny County require some form of certificate, but not a 4-year degree. We also know that we have a massive student debt crisis across this country and here in Pittsburgh. And if we can help kids get 60 credits for free before they go on to a 4-year degree, if that's what they choose to do, that's a great thing that we can help them to do. And we also know that the community college has always been a great feeder for our trades and our apprenticeship programs, but also for our first line workers, our bus drivers, our public safety personnel. And so, to me, it's a win-win-win for our community, for our young people, and for our workforce. And so again, it's about investing in us.
Great, thank you. So let me dig in a little bit there, because if you're familiar with the Hill District, you probably know that the Hill District has largely received more of the public housing than any other area in the city during that time when when public housing was being initially developed. And so we still have deep levels of poverty as a result of that within our community. And some considerable pockets of under and unemployment in our neighborhood. A lot of government agencies don't really like to talk about some of the clusters of tremendous poverty that we're experiencing in the neighborhood. And my question to you is, how do we ensure that folks in those parts of Pittsburgh and in those parts of the county, but specifically in the Hill District and other neighborhoods like the Hill District, that folks are connected to opportunity clearly, and that we are outcomes based in how we analyze and determine if we are successful as a county.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the Hill District in that regard has so much going for it. Starting with just the being where you are, right? The fact that the Hill District sits between the two biggest economic engines of this region in Oakland and in the Central Business District, but also the infrastructure that you have. And I'm not talking about the hard infrastructure, but the fact that you have a community plan, the fact that you have those resources available and have a direction as to where you want to go is really far and above what you see in a lot of places around Allegheny County. So to your credit, that's a great thing. And because of those things, I do think there are a lot of businesses, employers who want to be in that area, who want to be there. And so our task as we develop ideas around how we can accommodate that kind of growth. Obviously, it's got to start with what bubbles up within your community, but it's got to have community benefit around it, right? So that when employers who see the obvious advantages that exist in somewhere like the Hill District, that we are holding them accountable to be providing services and jobs to the community. And I would say the same thing is true around any further development of newer affordable housing. We have to make those opportunities available to the community and really make sure that is, people have put long lifetimes of commitment into their neighborhoods, and not just in the Hill. And we want to make sure that that's rewarded. I fully support that, and making sure that those people who have been closest to the issues around those communities and have stuck it through and are there, that they are at the table, and that they are being accommodated.
Okay, thank you. So to that point, how would a county executive Lamb handle the Lower Hill District project? What is your perception of it? What would you do differently? As you probably know, the Sports and Exhibition Authority and the Urban Redevelopment Authority own the Lower Hill District. And if you mentioned community benefits agreements. And as you know, the Lower Hill District has a community benefits agreement. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing, what you're thinking, and how you would manage that development.
I have an interesting perspective on the Lower Hill. I grew up in Beachview, and a little part of Beachview where in the late 50s, early 60s, a new church was built. And that church was basically built to replace a church that was being torn down in the Hill District because of the Civic Arena development. So a lot of my neighbors growing up were people who were removed from the Hill District in the Lower Hill District during that period of time. St. Peter's Church, which used to exist in the Lower Hill, was a church that was run by the Franciscan order. And so St. Pamphlet's Church, which became my church, was also a Franciscan church. And so a lot of the parishioners from the Hill moved up to that church to continue that connection. And so when news came around tearing down the Civic Arena, to me, I almost saw it more as justice, in establishing a neighborhood there. I get concerned now that what's happening isn't so much a neighborhood. It seems to be focused on, the commercial side of things, and so we want to make sure we are fulfilling, I think, a historical wrong in developing that Lower Hill in a way that provides a true community. Not just a business district, but residential, and that residential is reflective of the past, and that residential is reflective of the people, again, who have been closest to the pain, so to speak, in the Hill, and making sure that their needs are met.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And so to that point, the county executive would be responsible for appointments to critical boards and commissions, including the Sports and Exhibition Authority and others, right? What will be your philosophy on appointments and how you would lead, right, as a county executive after those commissioners and or board members are appointed? Like, what would be your process? And then also, what kind of leadership would you have on an ongoing basis relative to the decision making?
I think the process has to be an inclusive process, a diverse and inclusive process that really looks at these boards in a way that to bring expertise. But the problem you have in a lot of these boards is that the expertise you want are typically people who may be conflicted in the decision making that goes to those boards, right? So the URA, you're not going to put a lot of developers on the board of the URA because they're conflicted. But you've got to have so a process that really can bring to bear people who understand the issues, but also, as I said, people who are closest to the issues. So I talk a lot about whether it's in this area of economic development, or whether it's in areas around criminal justice, or whether it's areas around human services, that making sure that we have people who are really closest to the pain, people who really have experienced the issues around these organizations, people who have been maybe affected in a bad way around these, that they're at the table in helping to decide who's sitting on these boards and who's making these decisions for them. At the end of the day, it really is what it's about. It's about having people who are basically making decisions on your behalf, not on my behalf.
Mm-hmm.
They're making decisions on behalf of this community, and so having that reflective of the people that they are portraying to represent, or at least hopefully actually representing, that we need to make sure that we have that kind of process that brings to bear, people with the right expertise, but also people with that connection to the issue at hand.
Mm-hmm. So that is, an excellent point. And one of the things, that's happening in our community is there's a resident and or a group of residents who are feeling very unheard right now and underrepresented in many ways. And so, in fact, there's, I think it's called the People's Pledge, right? That's circulating right now because people are feeling that, the typical, swearing in process and the typical processes that we have right now are not leading to the level of representation that is needed in different spheres. And so, so my question to you is, some of this is manifesting. Let me give you one more point of information. Some of this is manifesting in the fact that a lot of commissions and boards are still meeting on Zoom. And business is happening in some ways faster than it did before COVID, because, a lot of the typical, processes are not in place, right? And so a lot of seniors do not have access to the digital technology, or they're just not comfortable, even if they do have access. A lot of times the comments are closed and not available. I go to, as I'm sure you would imagine, quite a few commission hearings for city planning and the Urban Redevelopment Authority and so forth. And while those are not specifically under your purview, the Sports and Exhibition Authority also, has public hearings, and it changes for all of them. And none of them at this stage are very accessible to the public, right? It's gotten to the point where you can go to a lot of these meetings and there's no public comment, right? Or there's one person or two on huge and hugely important deals and decisions. And that's really a reflection of not having sufficient access. So my question to you is the county back to work in person when it comes to these boards and commissions? What is your understanding of that? What is your philosophy on, you spoke to some of this in your introduction, transparency, access to public input, and I think most importantly, taking the public input and actually incorporating it in the decision making?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. That's, the great example I could tell you is Port Authority, right? Port Authority meets on Friday at 9:30 in the morning. Now, if who can get to that meeting, so and where is it? And so having more accessible meetings, more accessible meeting times, and then public comment, I think, is often looked at as just a hassle of the meeting, right? And instead of actually having engagement, some kind of community engagement around issues, we do a obligatory 2 or 3 minutes that that the boards let happen, but there's no actual engagement around these issues. And I think that's true not just in the public meeting area, but even in issues like, I rode the 61C last week, from McKeesport into Oakland. And you really get a sense for how critical that lifeline is. But talking to some of the operators, and we know we have a massive problem that we don't have enough operators to get back to regular service post-pandemic. But I've never seen an advertisement for a bus driver, except on a bus, and so that kind of just that public facing engagement around those issues. I set that example, but I would apply it also to the whole idea of community engagement, community input, a diversity of opinion, all those things. We need to do better. We need to do a better job of doing that. I mean, I've tried to incorporate it into the things that I do, both as controller and on the boards where I sit. But we really have to do a better job in these critical boards to get better community engagement.
Thank you. So, as you know, we are facing a tremendous spike in crime, violent crime in our county, in our neighborhoods, extensive gun violence. The county has a critical role relative to ensuring that citizens are protected and safe. In particular, the criminal justice system is very much connected to the role of a county executive. Can you tell us a little bit about what you would do to address some of the crime activity that we're seeing in our region, in our neighborhoods, and how you would alleviate these day-to-day crime issues that people are facing in our county and our neighborhoods?
Yeah, and I've got a lot of experience there. I worked a lot in the criminal justice system. I'm a lawyer. I've represented hundreds of clients, including many inmates at the county jail. And I bumped up against that institutional racism that we've seen in our court system, and it's real. I mean, and it's real at every phase of the criminal justice process, whether from arrest to arraignment to bail, to incarceration, to trial, to post trial. Every phase of it. African American defendants are treated worse than non-Black defendants. It's just a fact, and so we have to address that. And so when I see the issues at the jail, I, as county exec, plan to take a very active role in the jail oversight board. That I plan to, I do think it's time for new leadership at the jail. And I think it's time for a number of audits at the jail, including auditing the food service, including auditing the healthcare, and including audit general operations down there. Again, another area where we have manpower issues that I think our plan for the community college could help. So I think those are the issues around the jail. But when you think about what's going on in the community, I really have agreement with Ed Gainey about what the response needs to be, and that while it is an increased police presence and dealing with this manpower struggle that we have with the police bureau right now in the city of Pittsburgh, it's also about that co-response, right? And having social services respond, whether it's a mental health situation, whether it's an addiction related situation, and trying to divert a lot of that away from the criminal justice system. And the biggest problem that we've had, and I've done audits on this, is that while I think the city administration is saying the right things, they've failed to launch. They've failed to launch this co-response unit. And it's something that needs to happen. And it's a critical role that the Department of Human Services needs to help fill. Those social services are critical to whether it's conflict resolution, violence prevention, or the bigger things of the, I'm sorry about the lighting just went here, but the bigger issues around addiction and mental health. So we've got to, we really do need to have that co-response unit. And as you know, again, the problem is we've got significant manpower problems there. Caseworkers they're not paid enough. It's their caseload is too big. And it's a tough job. And we're losing caseworkers because of that. My idea around that is that we need to create a supervised caseworker model at the community college. We know right now there are a lot of people, and I'm sure it's true in your neighborhood as well. There are a lot of people out in the community doing great social work who, for one reason or another, aren't a caseworker. They don't have that credential, right? They're working for a community-based organization, or they're working for a faith-based organization, or some volunteer kind of a situation. We can bring those individuals in to the community college, get them a certificate as a supervised caseworker, add them, bring them in under the DHS umbrella, and really help us deal with this massive caseload that we have. But also then gives them the opportunity to maybe go ahead and pursue that larger credential and really help us deal with a lot of these situations out there.
Thank you for that. So as you know, the Department of Human Services, also known as DHS, is the the largest portion of the county budget. And so I think that I think it's important to have a human service centered mindset. How do we get to the outcomes that we need to see on the ground for our county and for our neighborhoods? How do we get to those specific outcomes? How will you manage to specific outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple of things, and you're right. It's the biggest department. It takes in so much, and the fact is, right now, I don't think we even have the capacity to deal with what's about to happen. I mean, when I hear those in the criminal justice world and various prosecutorial decisions that look to diversionary programs to get people away from the criminal justice system to deal with whether it's an addiction situation or a mental health situation, getting them more toward a treatment-based program. That's going to require the district attorney and the county executive working in new ways that they're not right now. And I worry that we don't have the capacity to do that. And so really putting a focus on the workforce at DHS. Unfortunately, right now we're relying a lot on privatization down there, which is also a problem. So building out an actual workforce that is controlled by the county of county paid employees, I think is a big part of being able to address long term a lot of these concerns.
Right. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about affordable housing.
Yeah.
As you probably know, there are quite a few affordable housing units that will be expiring relative to their compliance period with whatever their funding source is, right? And so that means that there are a lot of folks in the county, and particularly people who are poor and or working class, are going to be housing insecure or at risk of becoming housing insecure. What will be your solution for addressing the affordable housing needs of our county?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time, as you know, in the court system, and as the last prothonotary of the county, and the issues around landlord tenant and eviction have, as you know, are significant in Allegheny County, and we've got to find a way to, during the pandemic, we had this model of moratorium on eviction and funding it in a way that was helpful, obviously, to tenants, but also to landlords. and so finding ways to continue those kind of programs, making sure that people have a lawyer, making sure that that the housing funding that is potentially there is accessible to them. I think is critical. I think part of it is I think part of the answer is setting up regional housing courts to help in that situation, and whether that is on a rotating the district justices, the magisterial district justices through those court systems, or whether it's appointing senior magistrates to handle that caseload. I think having that focus, we've created a housing court actually in my old office is the intake for housing court now, and we've seen opportunities to work with neighborhood legal services and others to really protect tenants, but also to make sure that mom and pop landlords aren't holding the bag either. So if we're dealing with both sides of that equation, I think it's part of it. But the bigger part of it, I think, also has to be finding ways to bring security, and that to me is home ownership. Finding new opportunities for home ownership. There are clearly roles that the county deals with directly here. As you know, in your neighborhood and in neighborhoods all across this county, we've got a significant number of vacant and abandoned homes. They are upside down in liens. Having a county-wide tax claim bureau to help us speed the process of getting those properties cleared and title and back on the tax rolls and available to community groups like yours, available to some of the more successful land banks, not the one in the city, frankly, but some of the more successful land banks and community organizations and municipalities out there who are doing pretty good work on flipping and turning some of these properties and making those available for affordable housing, making them available to first-time homeowners, and helping drive and fund those opportunities, I think is a big part of it. As you know, here in the city, we do have a housing opportunity fund that is pretty well funded at this point. And we need to use those dollars wisely. And I think a big chunk of that has to be used toward encouraging and helping to fund first-time homeowners and home ownership in every neighborhood.
Great, thank you. One of the challenges that we're seeing is that, in terms of rental, there is, and some people aren't going to become a homeowner, right? Some people, would prefer to rent, or they just have decided that that's in their best interest. How will we ensure that there are sufficient rental units that are accessible to the residents of the Hill District and other neighborhoods like the Hill District within the county? And to layer onto this, and I know you know this probably quite well, the area median income, this is one of the biggest challenges we have, particularly in neighborhoods like the Hill District, is the area median income is based on the county median income, not the city median income, which is generally much lower than the county median income. So it makes it very difficult in neighborhoods that have either very low income or low working class incomes to stay in, to secure rental housing. Do you have any ideas on how to bring additional rental to the market and to close deals faster?
So this is a great question because, I know this, that when it comes to the decision about what the right housing model is for you, you're the best decision maker, and so making sure we have those kind of options available, whether it's for seniors. I mean, I remember when my parents, it was time for them to downsize out of their home and they moved into a smaller home, and that was the right decision for them. When my father passed away, then my mother moved into a senior community. That was the right decision for her. And so we have to make sure that seniors and others, that the right decisions, that those are available for them, whatever that may be. And the rental market is actually pretty strong here in Pittsburgh, which I think has a negative effect on affordability for people. So we've got to find a way to do affordable rental and fund it. And I'm committed to that. But I actually think there's a deeper problem there. And it's not just here in Pittsburgh, it's across all of our communities. And that is just the process the process of permitting, the process of codes, and planning. It is so cumbersome right now, and we've got to find a way to really cut through a lot of the permitting process. I mean, our office, I've audited PLI numerous times, and it doesn't seem to get any better. That the process of applying for even the most basic of permits is so cumbersome and so fraught with problem. It's okay, now you need to do this, and you go do that, and you bring the paperwork back. Okay, now you need to do this, and rather than having a more streamlined permitting process, and something that we want to work on, and again, it's through this Office of Municipal Partnership. We want to be able to work with communities across the county, some who are doing it better than others, around the issues of code enforcement, around the issues of permitting, so that we can really get development done in a more timely way and a more expedited way. But the rental market I think is the specific challenge to me, because it is, again, we have a very strong rental market in this town right now. And so we've got to find ways to subsidize that, to allow for the affordability. And some of that is, of course, making developers do set asides and do those kind of things. But I have found that that's often not enough, right? So we've really got to commit to, I think, an across the board, all above approach to affordable housing, from the very lowest level of helping those who are homeless, to those who need maybe single room occupancy, to those to transition out of homelessness, but then to those who want to have a basic apartment opportunity. We need to be able to find those opportunities and fund them.
Great, thank you. So to your point, right, around the process of development, and one of the things that I think is a challenge for community builders or community developers or people who care about making sure that everyone in the county, everyone in our neighborhoods are being served, is that the subsidy that is available through the county, through the city, through the school district, is oftentimes not attached to anything other than, say, jobs, right? Job creation is always the metric that you hear across every realm of government. And at the end of the day, there may be job creation, but sometimes those jobs aren't even accessible to the people in the neighborhood. Units are not accessible to the people in the neighborhood. Can you tell me, this is a two-part question. Can you tell me your philosophy around subsidizing market rate development and the responsibilities that should come with developers accessing that subsidy? And then the second part is, how will you ensure that county grants, particularly for development and economic development, are distributed more equitably to projects that serve all of the people in the county, and especially those who need it the most?
Yeah, and I think you hit on a point that I think some people often criticize me about. And the fact is, to me, economic development and growth, there's this chicken and the egg. Is it about having the population that can fill jobs, or is it about creating jobs that attracts population? And I fall on the side of population first. Having population, growing population, and training that population into the jobs that we need in our workforce is the number one thing that we can do to improve development. Because businesses who want to locate here, the number thing they want is not tax incentives and subsidy. It's knowing they have a reliable workforce, that they have a reliable population. And so to me, the point that you made early in this question is that there's got to be investment in residential opportunity, because we've got to have bodies in these communities, right? That goes to another point, which I don't want to stray too far from your question, but the fact of the matter is, any community that's growing in this country right now is growing by the degree to which it can attract international immigration. And we need, as a community, to recognize that. We need to grow more welcoming around that, both in attracting, but also in retaining our international immigrant population. That's how we're going to grow. I mean, without that, we're going to die. And I think people have to recognize that. And I know it's controversial. People are comfortable in the familiar, but it's the diversity that makes us strong. And so we've got to commit to being a more welcoming community. I mean, I'm the grandson of immigrants, and so over the last century, we've gone from a community that was a very robust and vibrant and welcoming community of immigrants to a community that I think fears immigration in a lot of ways, and we've got to get beyond that. So that's a lot of where I think our growth has to come from in attracting that population. And people who say, well, we need jobs first. The fact is, having those bodies here generates its own economic activity, and so I know that's how I fall on that side. But so I agree with you that the matrix that we use a lot of times in incentivizing development looks at jobs first, when I think we need to look at residents a lot more heavily, and something that I certainly have committed to. And when it comes to development, as again, it's got to. I think the county's got to be in a position to be ready to move when the community has a project, right? And when it comes up from the community and we're ready to move forward, the county and the other taxing bodies have to be ready to move forward to help that project along.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And I'd like to add to that a little bit, because I think that this is an important piece of nuance that oftentimes is not considered, is that within African-American communities, right, where there are these deep pockets of unemployment, and it's not just African-American communities, but I'm speaking specifically to the African-American community because the Hill District is nearly 80% African-American, although quite frankly, displacement and gentrification is shifting some of those numbers. I think that the question of immigration, right, coupled with how do we ensure that the people who are unemployed or underemployed here are benefiting from the economic opportunity first. And I think that's a very nuanced conversation that happens within the African-American community, right? And it should be a more, I think, open dialogue such that everybody is heard and everybody is understood. But I agree with you. Pittsburgh definitely needs to be more welcoming. Pittsburgh and our county could be more welcoming in quite a few regards relative to immigration. And then also, I think those connections to the people who are already here need to be strengthened. I don't think it's an either or, and not that you suggested that, you did not at all. I think it's a both and, but I do want to lift that point up a bit.
I agree with that completely. And I would tell you that even when we talk about, a commitment to, funding and building out affordable housing, that's got to be from the community, and the community's got to be there, and those units have to be available to them, right? So if we're going to come in and do some sort of clustered affordable housing in a neighborhood because it's attached to a transit development or those kind of things, got to make sure that the people in that community are engaged, involved, and have that opportunity to avail themselves to that affordable housing.
Right. So you seem to have all of the lead-in points that we need here in our discussion. So you mentioned transit. I'm certain have heard of and are familiar with bus rapid transit here in the Hill District, the uptown portion of the Hill District. I'd like to get your perspective on it and how we can ensure that that it has the intended and not the unintended consequences.
Yeah, and that really is the trick. I mean, I have gone back and forth on that project. I think you may know early on, I was opposed to that project for a couple of reasons. First off, I still am not thrilled with calling it bus rapid transit because it's not a dedicated right of way. It's a bus lane but it's not a dedicated right of way. I mean, we're still gonna have traffic entering that right of way. So, but since the start of the project, a number of things have happened that have, I think, improved it. And there are a lot of benefits to it. Probably the biggest benefit safety-wise is the fact that we're going to be able to eliminate the counterflow bus lane on Fifth Avenue in Oakland, which I think is absolutely critical and something that we need to do. I also ended up supporting the project mainly because of the way that I saw it as a creative way to bring federal funding into Uptown and into the Hill District in a way that that was creative to allow us to really rebuild Fifth and Forbes Avenue and make that a more attractive corridor for all kinds of transit, not just the bus. So but as a transit project itself, I don't know that it does much, right? Getting to Oakland from downtown 30 seconds faster isn't that great of a thing, right? But I think it is going to open up a lot of opportunity, along the route, including in your community, and we've got to make sure again that transit-oriented development is reflective of the needs of the community, and so making sure that everyone's at the table for that. I am a big fan of public transit, and I carry my card, and I live in Mount Washington. I use the incline a good bit. I use the T a good bit. I think I mentioned earlier I rode the 61C one day last week, but I'll tell you, I had a meeting in Arlington a few weeks back on a Sunday at noon. And I drove out Arlington Avenue, really from the south side all the way out to Arlington behind a PAT bus. And on a Sunday at noon, that Port Authority bus stopped at every stop. And I keep calling it Port Authority. I know it's PRT now. But it just shows you the lifeline that system is to community, and the needed service that it is. So we've got to find a way to get more operators on board. We've got to find a way to get back to a more regular service on a lot of those lines, and then also serving some of our transit deserts out there with service. One of the ideas I think would be helpful, and I want to do this for county employees. I think our large employers need to buy bus passes for their employees, and I want the county to do that. The county has 7,500 employees. If we bulk purchase 7,500 annual bus passes, that's going to have a big impact. If the county does it, and the city does it, and the school district does it, we already have the universities do it for their students. If they did it for their employees as well, then now we've got a funding source that really would help transit across our community and help to drive, I think, a better product in the end. The BRT system is underway at this point. I'm interested to see how it's going to work for us. But again, we've got to be diligent about the development along that line and making sure that the community is all in.
Right, and I think just as a point of conversation, one of the challenges was that the entire Hill District really was not as deeply engaged in that process as should have been, right? And so a lot of people separate Uptown from the Hill District, and you probably know the Hill District has several micro neighborhoods within it. Yep. But we cannot dispute the incredible impact that the Uptown portion of the Hill District has on the broader neighborhood, and particularly how this bus rapid transit will impact the neighborhood. And so I think that was a bit of a miss, and then let's layer on the fact that it was zoned differently than what is called for in the Greater Hill District Master Plan. And these are the kinds of things that I think that county and the city can work more effectively towards, is kind of synchronizing efforts such that that the initiatives that are advanced really do align with what's already happening on the ground. And so for example, there's a smaller percentage in the eco district than there is in the Greater Hill District Master Plan, right? It doesn't really anticipate the impacts on the broader Hill District, just the excitement around connecting downtown to Oakland. And so at any rate, I just wanted to share that as a point of reflection for you.
And I would also add to that. I mean, I think, when you think about what's going to happen, I mean, we know that this area along this bus line is ripe now for development. You're already seeing it. I mean, you've got, Duquesne University's building a medical school on our side of it, and you're seeing other developments take place along that line. And while I agree with the idea that that is going to be a great attraction and bring people by their own numbers, we still know that most of the people who come there are going to come in a car. And so if we're taking away right away for the bus, it's going to make traffic worse. And so, dealing just with the basics of traffic engineering along that route is going to add to problems within the community. And again, we need to make sure that if that's true, and I believe it is, that we're going to have job growth out of this whole thing, we got to make sure the community is getting the benefit of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we know that, the new hospital, what we're seeing so far is that there is a clear spike in rental units in that area. I mean, I'm talking $1,600 and up. There are some affordable units, and some people say you can do affordable in one building, do market in the next building, and so forth. But at the end of the day, it takes a lot longer to fund an affordable housing development. And so that may not work out in the end. In fact, what we know about the market is that once the market arrives, the pressures are tremendous, not just on that area, but the bordering areas. And so anyway, don't want to go too deep dive there because I want to get through these final questions with you. So the second part of that question, though, was how will you ensure that more of the county grants and county funds are distributed to Black communities and communities like the Hill District that have gaps in their projects because largely there's not the same amount of wealth in our neighborhoods. And we can have a whole different dialogue about why that is. We know that generational wealth has not been accumulated in a lot of neighborhoods like the Hill District. And so sometimes there are gaps. There's not enough money to do all of the pre-development. There's not enough money to, do all of the parts of development. But with collective will, there are real opportunities to do some transformative work in neighborhoods like the Hill District. In case you don't know, the Hill District has about 600 acres of vacant land and or vacant buildings together combined, and that's just not acceptable in the heart of our region. And so I'd like to get your input a bit on how we can distribute grants, both county and state grants that come through the county more equitably and more transparently.
Yeah. I think that first off, when you see the frenzy that goes around for RCAP and all the other kind of subsidy and availabilities out there. And you talk to a developer and you wonder if this is truly a market rate type situation, then why is this grant necessary? How good a project is it if you really need this grant? To me, those grants and those programs should be for those programs that are actually delivering a need, right? And so making the sort of the decision matrix around making need a part of that and serving a broader social or dealing with a broader social ill, I think has to be weighed into what we're doing. And so when we see opportunities to really provide housing in communities that don't have it, or provide jobs where they're needed most in community, I think that has to weigh in to the grant making process.
Excellent, thank you. So we're gonna do a quick round of questions here. So 1 minute or less, if you can. What are the top 3 things you plan to do for seniors of the Hill District and other neighborhoods like the Hill District?
Well, I think, like I said earlier, I mean, we need to be able to have options, right? I mean, every senior is different. I mean, I look now, when 10, 20 years ago, when you went around to the city, the various senior centers in the city, it's a much different experience than what's going on today, right? I think seniors who were born, back before World War II, have a different outlook and a different sense of how they want to spend their time than a baby boomer senior of today, right? And so we've got to have a mix of opportunity. Like I told you, when my parents made the decision to move, they had the option that was right for them. We got to make sure that we have the right options for seniors as they choose where to live. And part of that is having the kind of community where they can thrive. And that means a safe community. That means, having a walkable community. That means having access to transit, access to grocery, access to the medical needs that they may have. Having that kind of walkable, safe community, I think is critical, and something that we, as I said, when we talk about investing in us, that's what we're talking about, investing in our communities, making sure we have the green space and the infrastructure and the things that we need in those communities. And that's a broader look on economic development, but what's specific to seniors and the communities that they need, we need to make sure that we have every option available to them.
All right, thank you. What are the top 3 things you will do for Hill District children?
So I think there are a number of things that we need to do, and probably first and foremost, I was a founder of an organization that has changed a lot since I founded it. But when I founded an organization with Salah Uddin and Susan Brownlee called A+ Schools, and the focus on A+ schools at the time, a major focus was out of school time, and the county, I think, can play a key role in out of school time, for our children, both after school and preschool. So having programs that are accessible and available to our children, I think, in their out of school time is critical. I also think, though, that we have to put a deeper focus on public education beyond K-8 or high school, and that means preschool. That means having quality pre-K programming in every community across Allegheny County is something that we really need to focus on, and something that I think should drive a lot of what happens in our Human Service Department in the children and youth side of that operation. And then on the other end, we're going to make community college free for all graduates, all high school graduates. In the city, we've got the Pittsburgh Promise, but we've got a lot of kids who aren't Promise eligible, and we want to open up that opportunity for them. And I think that's to me, education is key, and providing those opportunities would be helpful. Then, of course, you have the recreation side, and this is a town that is a great sports town, and we want to have those opportunities for kids in every neighborhood, including downtown. We want to have recreational opportunities for our young folks. I mean, I talk to merchants in downtown. People talk a lot about what happens at the end of the school day when a lot of kids come into downtown. Fact is, merchants think it's great. That vibrancy. We want to encourage kids in downtown, but we want to have them positively directed. And so working with the schools who are here in downtown to provide meaningful after school time experiences, I think, is something we need to focus on.
Thank you. And the final question is, what makes you the leader that Hill District residents and people from other communities like the Hill District should choose?
So, I bring to this job unparalleled experience in government. As I mentioned earlier, the fact that we're even talking about this race is because of a decision we made as a community 25 years ago to change the way we do government. I led that effort. And ever since then, whether it was in the work that I've done in the criminal justice area, work that I've done improving our court system, I'm the one person in this race that has brought something from press conference to practice. We've got a lot of elected officials who are pretty good at the press conference side of things, but the follow through is what I bring to the table, the wherewithal to get things done. And in the Hill District, that's about, that is a uniquely special place. It is, it's geographic location, it's history, it's culture. It's something that means something to me. And it's something that I know that we can really create a community there reflective of the people who've been there for all these years, but also growing that community in ways that will take advantage of its strategic location, but not lose sight of the culture and historic nature that neighborhood provides. And that's what I'm committed to.
Thank you very much, Controller Lamb. We really appreciate your time. And, we will certainly be watching closely. This has been an invaluable hour to come to learn a little bit more about your thinking around what it will take to lead the county. So I thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.